So we'll go ahead and get started with the session. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Ian to chat with us. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrea. So happy to be here and to round out 2025 with another one of these episodes of the Expert Series. What you're looking at right now is a little bit of the behind the scenes here. So, what is bringing this content to you? Of course, this is in part the James Sibred Center for Artificial Intelligence, but also Global Campus. You just heard from some of the team here, and something we host, which is called the Career Skills Institute. And this is the go-to place for San Diego and beyond to obtain their career upskilling and reskilling needs. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we often hear about the need for technical skills. Lots of articles and chatter about things like coding, AI, of course, data science. But when you unpack the labor market data, I think there's a deeper story here as well. We see a massive market-wide demand for communication skills, and this transcends every industry. So today, I'm going to walk you through some of the evidence linking communication directly to employability before we unleash Mr. Tedasco on you with all of the latest in AI skills. So what you're looking at on this slide is really my primary thesis, that communication is a mass market skill with growth demand. And like I said, we're going to unpack this a little bit further. Next slide, please. So one way to conceptualize this is it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife in that the tools and capabilities associated with communication skills are immensely useful. It's a skill you always want to have with you. And next slide. Why is this? It's because hands down, communication is the most transferable and in-demand skill. This surpasses the technical skills that often get the headlines. I think many people have probably just overlooked communication or assumed it was something that was given, but it is strongly emerged, and we can see here in the data exactly where and how. Next slide, please. So as we look at the national landscape, Aura Intelligence analyzed around 2 million job postings across the US. And what was the result? Communications was the single most requested attribute. This outranked any technical capability. And LinkedIn's own research backs this up, listing it as the #1 in-demand skill globally for 2 years running. I suspect this is going to continue. So suffice to say, employers are crystal clear on this point. Communication skills, in my opinion, these are a force multiplier and are in effect the primary driver of employability and upward mobility. Next slide, please. So now focusing in on California, the California Employment Training Panel found that 42% of all employers need more communication skills. And if we drill down deeper to the engine of our economy, the small business, for these employers with smaller teams, that percentage jumps up to 50%. This is their #1 need. It's not a secret. And why might that be? Anyone who's worked in a small business could probably tell you off the top of their head. It's because you have to wear a lot of hats. You don't have the luxury of being a silent technician. You need to be able to sell, to present, to collaborate. This really is a survival skill for those of us who've spent time in the small business. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of communication around the digital economy, but many researchers actually look at this a little differently. They refer to it as the hybrid economy, and the idea behind this is that, and after looking at the analysis of millions of job postings, what we see is communication remains the #1 baseline skill. It's the foundation upon which all technical skills should sit. So, for example, I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with a data scientist or someone who worked in a similar role where you couldn't understand a word of what was coming out of their mouth. I'm sure they were technically a genius, but in that particular work circumstance, without this force multiplier, the ability to interact with other humans in a way that is understandable and effective, it certainly fell short. Next slide, please. So what about AI? Isn't this going to solve everything? Won't ChatGPT just write all of my correspondence? Well, the World Economic Forum predicts that yes, 39% of core technical skills are going to change in the year 2030, which is not far off, due to automation and other things. But the skills that remain safe and central are decidedly the human ones, the deeply human ones, things like leadership, social influence, empathy. So as we are gladly delegating more of this data processing type work, among other things, to the machines, The human value must then shift, and it shifts entirely to things like synthesis and persuasion and storytelling. And those are all functions that sound an awful lot like communication to me. Next slide, please. Okay, so we made the case. Communication is important. So how does somebody strengthen their communication capabilities? How do you showcase these skills to potential employers? Next slide, please. This is where the Career Skills Institute comes in. So we offer proudly more than 500 programs. They're flexible, they're job-ready online programs. Many of them are asynchronous, so it can fit in between a lunch break, after hours, before hours, weekends, whenever it makes sense for you. Next slide, please. And we have many that actually relate to communication skills. So what you're looking at here is our bachelor's degree completion program, which is fully online in communication. So someone that might have some credit, no degree, and wants to take that across the finish line and really showcase to employers their communication skills. This would be one option. Next slide, please. And for those who aren't looking for degrees, but rather for something that's a little more nimble in size, we have a variety of professional certificate programs. I just picked three at random to share with you here. These directly relate to particular functions within enterprise, so sales, public relations, or content creation, all of which certainly have the backbone of communication at the core. So these are just some of the many programs that we have in that portfolio. Some of these programs, many of these programs are going to be starting in just a couple of weeks in January. If you're looking for a place to start your learning journey in 2026 with gusto, we would love to have you. And there'll be more information, I'm sure, in the emails that follow and in the deck as we share this out with others. So as we now transition over to our resident AI enthusiast, Mike Tedasco, I have the pleasure of introducing you to him. As Andre mentioned, he is a visiting fellow at the James Sibert Brown Center for Artificial Intelligence at SDSU. And I am always excited when I get to pass the baton and mute my mic because I never know exactly what's going to happen. And I have seen a few of these slides in advance. I think you're in for a treat. So with that, Mike, the floor is yours.
Ian, thank you. Thank you for the great intro. That was so nice. And I will say to everybody out there as well, who is watching, who's listening, who's maybe attending for the first time, I am also excited about what is going to happen over the next 30 minutes because I don't know myself. As far as what things I'm going to say or anything like that. So hopefully it will be interesting and exciting for you all as part of it. Briefly, who am I? Andrea had mentioned I had been at PayPal for a long time. I was running the innovation lab there. I write about many things AI related, including on LinkedIn here. If you want to click on that link, scan that, you can follow my blog that talks about AI stuff in very normal terms. And of course, I'm a visiting fellow at San Diego State's James Silverad Center for Artificial Intelligence. And that's what brings me here today. So excited to be here with you all to talk about something that is really exciting. How do we use AI to communicate better, to communicate more efficiently, communicate more effectively? But we're going to start off with something else. I'm actually going to start off before in the non-AI world, the olden times, pre-ChatGPT, whatever it is that you want to call that. And start with a little story about communication. I used to work at a paper company. And yes, it was a Dunder Mifflin style paper company back in the day. This was early in my career. And when I was working there, I was in a kind of a unique, fun place where I got to be in some meetings with the CEO. Don't think Michael Scott. He was a little bit more competent, let's say, than that. But one of the things that I noticed with the CEO in meetings was that he would be scribbling down things a lot, literally just pen and paper at all times, scribbling down things, notes, multiple sheets. I never realized what he was doing. He almost was never even looking up at times. Um, and then one meeting where I was in with him, I actually got to present and it was at the front of the room. And after that meeting, he goes up to me and shakes my hand and says, "Great job." And he hands me this piece of paper. And while I don't have the actual piece of paper, I had AI do a reasonables facsimile, and it truly looks something like this. Um, it was largely it was not legible. I could not actually make out anything beyond my name and a few other things. It was riddled with misspellings. But damn it, it was personal. It was deeply personal. And honestly, that meant so much to me. I wouldn't want to have that message any other way. What the CEO would do all the time was he would give letters of support to the people presenting, to other people within the organization. He was just a people person. And it was frankly more endearing that it wasn't perfect. It was the effort that counted. It was deeply personal. I remember at one point he gave a letter to my wife, who I don't even know if he even met, but he had me bring it home and give it to her because I was working overtime a little bit. Like it was deeply personal, and that is what mattered. And that's, 20 plus years later, has me remembering this story very well. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about AI-ifying everything, blah, 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 all of that. But to just do things that are hyper polished is not real. What is going to matter even more than 20 years ago when I was at this paper company? What's going to matter more in this future that we're entering is authenticity. And you can use AI to make yourself more authentic. The bad use of AI is when it's less authentic, when it's not really you. And we will get into the difference, and that is really important. Um, I, I wrote about this in my before mentioned blog just recently. Um, and in that newsletter, I was saying, like, you just need to be conscious of this. You need to be conscious of where you use AI, conscious of where you do not want to use this. I'm going to be discussing ways throughout the presentation that I think could be beneficial to you all, but everyone is going to be a little bit different in how they want to use AI to effectively communicate. The last thing in the world I want anybody to do is to blindly let AI make all of these decisions for you. And I'm going to give one last example, and I swear we're going to get into the AI stuff next. This was something I literally saw when I was looking through this morning. This might look very familiar. Like this is literally the presentation that you're seeing. We do this in Google Slides. And I just kind of peeked at the top and I saw that bar that came from Google Gemini saying, generate a presentation in seconds. Gemini can draft a full slides deck with a single prompt. And to me, that kind of took me aback. I was like, wow, okay, I guess it could do the whole thing with that. Um, Needless to say, as you could probably tell, I didn't do that for this presentation. This was not written in AI. Why is that? Because with all of these things, when you have to make a conscious decision, you have to think about what's your end goal. If my end goal of this deck was to basically create a deck that I'm never going to see again, and I just need to have a whole bunch of slides with a whole bunch of words and pictures on it and all that, then do you know what? Have an AI do that for you. That probably wouldn't provide much value, but you can use it for that. But if the goal is to create something that I could then use to talk to hundreds of people and then riff on this and go through the process and tell personal stories and all this other kind of stuff. And frankly, one that, as I said to Ian before, like, I don't even know what I'm necessarily going to say, but there's a million directions I could do this because I'm comfortable enough with the material because I created it. Then you don't want your AI to do that for you. And so again, this is all about where you're comfortable, what is the end goal of what you want, and how can you have AI better help you achieve whatever that end goal is. Just because it could do something faster doesn't mean it's going to be able to do it better for you. Okay. And so with that, like what we're going to talk about here is like this little communication hierarchy is as we call it. So, I mean, what you want to do with your communication skills is you want to be good, you want to be clear, you want to be authentic. I'm going to say that word a lot here. You want to be authentic and credible in everything that you're doing. One tier below that is, I'm not being very clear with what I'm saying. I'm not really, effectively getting the message across of what I want the audience to perceive with this communication. All of those kind of things, that's kind of level two. That's your bad communication. That's where you got to up level. But there is one level below that where it is like truly bad AI communication, just disastrous. And we've all seen these kind of examples. This came, it was a couple screenshots from actual, I believe this was romance novels that were published. Romance novels like have a little bit of a well, clearly there's a stigma, which I think is unjustified for that. But also these authors churn these things out very quickly. It wouldn't be uncommon for 5 to 10 books a year being written by these authors. So like they're kind of ground zero of using these tools, and sometimes this stuff sneaks through. And if you do that, you're permanently destroying the trust of your audience. This is something that I actually debated with myself back and forth on whether or not to put in there. One of the things that we can talk about this more later. I just wanted to show this. Like, there are things out there. We're going to talk about AI in writing. There are AI detectors out there. I was using these detectors with the same writings in different scenarios. And as you can see, it's all over the place with this. Um, the takeaway is just sometimes bad writing is bad writing. And just because you think that you can detect it or tools think they get detected, it's not always right. It is really just all over the place with that. But ultimately, what you want to do is you want to learn how to communicate effectively, communicate efficiently using these tools. Now, I use these tools all the darn time. I write a ton. I I use it to help with presentations. Almost all the images that you're seeing in here are AI generated, as I label them as such. There are so many ways to effectively do that. So I'm going to start to walk you through some of my stack and how to think about how you can do it more efficiently and more effectively. Ultimately, I think of an AI as being your editor. I have had the pleasure of actually having a human editor that I have worked with on a few occasions when I was doing writings. And it's awesome to have a human editor, somebody else who is not you, to actually look through your stuff and give you feedback and fact check and do all this other kind of stuff for you as part of the process. It is awesome doing that. It is a luxury that 99.9% of us do not have. And that's just the reality of this. Um, but an AI can be a reasonable facsimile of that human editor when you are doing writings. There's a lot of advantages. They don't get tired. They could do it in the middle of the night. They could do it at any time. It's probably not going to ever be as good as that human, but it is going to be quick and effective and much, much less expensive. Because again, the reality is most of us will never have access to an actual human editor to read through all of our stuff. So use AI as your editor, not as your ghostwriter. Um, when you're doing things like that, that is what's going to kill your authenticity. And that ultimately is going to be the ultimate sin, if you will, in all of this that we're discussing. Um, so let's talk through tool stacks here that we have. The tools that I use most when it comes for all things AI and helping me communicate are Grammarly, Claude, and ChatGPT. Now, here's the honest truth. If you are working in a company and you just have access to Copilot, or you have a preference to Gemini or Grok or whatever, for the most part, it doesn't matter. These are just kind of the personal preferences, the examples that I'm going to walk you through for this. If you have a work stream that is similar or a tool that you're comfortable with, I can pretty much say that you can copy and replace the things that I'm saying with other tools in there. I never want people to think that there is like one tool to rule them all. They're all really, really darn good. And I think any of the like the foundation models and the kind of the best level of tools that are out there, which should be the ones that most people are accessing, are all going to be great. So tool, some reason my claw is disappearing here. So tool number one we're going to walk through is Grammarly. Again, a great tool that frankly I have actually tried to get rid of over time. But again, before I get into me trying to get rid of Grammarly, I want to go into another story. This was back in the 1980s, and yeah, I looked like that in the 1980s. I was actually a kid back then, but that's what Gemini said when I said to give myself in the 80s. I was in middle school, and I remember being wowed by a new technology that truly I couldn't believe that the teachers were allowing us to get away with. There was a computer lab at our school. Back in like the 1980s, if you're a school lucky enough to have a computer lab, yeah, that was like a thing, basically. Um, and I was able to type a paper that I probably wrote by hand beforehand and type it out on a computer screen. And there was a special key that I actually got to hit when I was doing that that would then do something that was magical. And that is known as spell check. So what would it do? So simply, here's how spell check worked back then. It would basically search for all the words in there. It would effectively try and find any of those words and see if it had an exact match in a table structure that it had. And if it didn't find that exact match, it would basically say, hey, this looks like it's a misspelled word. That's what spell check was. To me, the junior high kid way back when, that totally, totally felt like cheating. Like, in fact, I was convinced that that was cheating back then. Because like when we were told growing up, well, you don't know how to spell a word, you got to go to a dictionary, you got to look it up, you got to do this, you got to do this whole process. Um, Teachers ultimately let us do it. I felt more guilty than anything else after being in grade school before that, pounded into my brain that like, hey, this is how you do that. But now, 40 years later, do you know what? Does anybody say, I'm not going to read that book anymore because I think Stephen King used spell check when they were writing it? Actually, I think he still writes on a typewriter or whatever your favorite author is. No. Does anybody say that the red squiggles under there is cheating? No. It's commonplace. And in fact, it's using artificial intelligence technology today to even use those tools. It's not using that same table lookup format that I described before. And look, one of the best tools out there that does this, way better than what you'll see in Word or Google Docs, is something called Grammarly. What Grammarly does is it really takes that spell check process using AI, using all these other things that you can kind of turn on and takes it to the next level. As I said before, I actually tried to get rid of Grammarly at some point post ChatGPT because I'm like, it's I could use all this in ChatGPT, and for the 150 bucks a year that I pay for it, I haven't been able to get rid of it. I was like, after a month, I was like, oh my gosh, I need it back. Because it integrates everywhere. It could be in your browser, it could be in Word, it could be in Google Docs, it could be on your phone, it could be everywhere like that. It's basically within the flow, and you can customize it. This is just part of my preferences screen that I just took a screenshot of. And it allows you to do so much. And even to know, like, okay, there's a specific tone, there's a specific area that I'm going for, whatever with this is, you can do so much customization within there. And for folks who, might have certain things that you struggle with, the passive voice or something it might be with whatever your writing is or whatever it might be, this is a great way to keep you honest and frankly teach you along the way. For me, I suck at commas. I have no idea where I'm supposed to put in commas. I'm 48 years old and I literally have a degree in writing and I still don't know where the hell I'm supposed to put commas most of the time. It helps me with that. And yeah, I'm a little bit better from using this tool. It's a little bit of a crutch, but you know what? The value add I give in giving you this presentation and doing things for my boss and doing things for companies I'm advising or whatever else, it's not about where the commas are. It's what about the thoughts. And again, this is all getting back to as part of the AI process. Um, where is it that you're providing value and where is it that AI can truly help you out? All right, so that was Grammarly. Number two, whoops, one too far. Sorry. Number two, we're going to dive into Claude. Claude is probably my favorite traditional AI writing tool. It's made by a company called Anthropic. They're constantly releasing new models as well. Even though there is a brand new one called 4.5 Opus, um, I actually find that still the slightly older model, 4.5 Sonnet, is where I actually turn to do my writing still. I went to the higher powered model and it just, for whatever reason, didn't seem as good to me. I don't know why. It's hard to fathom, hard to explain. But so anyway, so 4.5 Sonnet is typically what I use when I am using Claude. Um, One of the things that it can do an amazing job at is you can actually use it as upload information into it, things you have previously written, press releases, company documents, whatever it might be, and it can actually define a writing style. And that is one of my favorite things about using Claude is so I have uploaded, I don't know, it was probably 10 blog posts or something. I put it in there, gave it a label, and it was as simple as that. You basically hit add writing sample here. And when I'm actually then writing, I will upload that style. So it automatically knows and converses with me in the way I like to talk. My blog, I use a lot of humor, references, blah, 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 all this other kind of stuff. It's kind of technical jargon, but explained in a very basic way. So all of these are things that are sort of unique to my style. And it is able to understand and reflect that much better versus if I had to say every single time going in there, oh, this is how I write. This is how I want to convey things and so forth. These are the types of words I use. This is how I use punctuation. This is how I don't. All that other kind of stuff. It just gets it and it can match your style as part of that. So when it's actually being your AI editor, when you give it that first, and again, my process is always kind of write the first thing as a human, then give it to Claude, have it give feedback to me. It's going to know where you're at. It's going to know, okay, this is how Mike writes. I'm not going to treat this as I would a formal document. I wouldn't treat this as like a text message or anything like this. It's in between. And as best I know, you can have as many of these styles as you want. So say your job is in PR or you write things for your company and you're an entrepreneur and want to put out press releases, you can create a PR style and have that in there. And thus choose that when you're trying to do a press release versus something else or whatever it might be. It's just such an easy way. And literally, it's just one simple button click every time. Once you have it set up, once you're in Claude, simple button click to be able to do that. Um, so I actually then even asked Claude, like, can you describe this writing style? Because like I just upload this stuff and just magically it spits out. Um, they have a tremendous ability to synthesize what a writing style or any kind of information within language models. Basically, it is a way to have almost yourself as your own editor, if you will, when you turn these styles on. But the value ultimately from this is like having the style, but then comes in the prompts. So again, as part of my process, I will have Grammarly running. I will be using it for spell checking, all that other kind of stuff. But when I get to the point where I'm kind of finished with version one, I throw this into Claude and I select my writing style and I effectively tell it to be my editor. Um, there are many different hats that an AI can take. It can, look for cliches. It could see, hey, is anything that I wrote in here boring? I can even say, hey, I'm trying to do X in this thing. Does that come across? You can put any of these as potential editor prompts within a tool like Claude, and it will specifically focus on giving you that feedback. The one thing I will say is these models do best when you do these things one by one versus, taking a screenshot of this, throwing it into Claude and say, hey, do all these things for me. It can. It actually, I think, does better when it's able to focus its time and energy on just one or two things. So I would say to it, hey, be a fact checker. Find any facts in here, then look up online to see if, these quotes are accurate, if these statistics are accurate to the best of your ability, and flag any of them that you're not sure of. I know it sounds crazy in some ways to ask a language model that, hallucinates a lot to be a fact checker for you, but I've actually found this to be really effective. Because what it's doing is it's kind of double checking your work. And it's not to say that you should blindly accept everything that comes out of the model. Well, if it said that the War of 1812 was in 1912, then it must be true. Well, no, then it's probably digging a little bit deeper into that and saying like, okay, it thinks these things are wrong. Let me go double check these things now. But it's actually made it so instead of having to fact check 20 things, you get 2 or 3 that you want to just double check as part of the process. It can do any of these things really well. And these are just a few of the things whenever I'm writing something, I can have it do. And again, if you're sending out an important email, if you are doing something to a customer or whatever it is for written communication, I think it's so huge. Grammarly, Claude, using those two things back to back will help you be more you, will help you be clearer in your communications, will help you find out a better way to actually communicate across what is it that you want to say and what you're trying to say and how you're trying to influence whoever it is. Because communication is influence, mind you. It's trying to influence somebody to see your side, to see your point, to do something, to not do something, whatever it might be. They can be hugely helpful with that. But it's not all written communication. I know I've spent a lot of time focusing on written, and you could apply a lot of these things to other areas as well. Um, this is not the only way that large language models can help because they are generating text, and that is kind of like at its core what they do, but they can also be extremely helpful in verbal communications. And let me give you an example. And for that, I actually do use ChatGPT whenever I wanted to help with that. So many AI models do have a voice mode. Gemini does, Grok, ChatGPT, Claude. But from what I've found time and time again, ChatGPT just really seems to be the best. If you're giving a presentation, if you're going to have a hard conversation with an employee or your boss or something like that, one of the things that you can do is you can actually say to it, hey, ChatGPT, I'm going to ask my boss for a raise. I'm going to upload my performance evaluation for you so you have that, but I'm just going to kind of speak to you off the cuff. And what I want you to do is I want you to critique that. I want you to actually give me feedback. I want you to help me have better points on how I could or should ask my boss for a raise. And you can do that with ChatGPT. You could actually have it take on the role of the boss. In fact, you could say, hey, I need you to be my boss and don't be a caricature of my boss. I want you to actually steelman my boss's position. I know as a company, our sales are down this year. We actually had to let some people go, but I still think that I deserve a 5% raise. And I want you to take on that role and have a vibrant discussion with me right now. And have at it and see where it goes. And you can do this as a back and forth. And again, it's not the same as actually talking to your boss, but it's a pretty decent simulation of what you might be able to have in those situations. And here's the reality. The more that you practice a presentation before you give it, the more that you ask for that raise before you actually go in there, the more that you do any of these things, especially if you give the AI the instruction, hey, don't take it easy on me. I actually want you to be real difficult. The harder you make those simulations, the more effective you can be when you're doing it in real life. It is the players. I'm a big basketball fan. Watch a lot of NBA. I love my Warriors. I love me some Steph Curry, all that kind of stuff. Um, when they're practicing and when they're actually going in there, like when you practice and you're just kind of leisurely putting up shots and all that, versus when you're in there, when you're sweating, when you're acting like there's only 3 seconds left on the shot clock, and what are you going to do in this situation? What are you going to do? It is preparing yourself for ultimately how you are going to excel and succeed really when that's on the line. When you've practiced that last second game winning shot, 1,000, 10,000 times, whatever it is, and then you actually have to do it, that's a whole lot different than if you're just kind of casually, yeah, just lazily listening to music, putting up shots, all that other kind of stuff. This is the same stuff. That same thing that applies in the NBA applies in the workplace as well. And this is just one way to do it using voice mode. And to just kind of double down on that. For any of you who are out there, who are looking for a job, who are looking to make a career shift or anything like that, take that to the next level. Make this into a real job interview type situation. I would never, ever want to go into a job interview in 2025 cold, where I haven't actually practiced that. Here's what you can do. Say it's a phone screen or something like that. Find out all the information. Pull in a LinkedIn profile of whoever it is in the phone screen. Put that information in there. Maybe they've done some writings. Maybe you find some other profiles of them. Put that all in there. Tell ChatGPT to take on the persona of this person, and have that person grill you, so to speak. Make it difficult on yourself. Again, the harder you practice, the more you are going to actually succeed with this. And if you tell AI to do that for you, and haven't kind of emphasized that, that is going to set you up for success. If you just give it to the AI, look, we all know AI can be a little bit sycophantic. If you just say, hey, I just want you to ask me some questions, whatever, you don't have any custom instructions that you want to be difficult with you, it's not going to be the real type of deal that you want. So yeah, like that's me. You should see some of that sweat pouring off of your face when the AI is asking you, oh my gosh, there is that gap on my resume. Boy, I didn't know you were going to ask me about that. Okay. It's okay. You're talking to a computer. It's not a real being. This is practice. Get those uncomfortable situations out now. Get that all out of your system as best you can, because that is going to set you up even better for the real thing. Then when you have successfully done that for the phone screen, you're there in person, set it up time and time and again. Do a similar thing. Put like a whole profile of whoever you're interviewing with in ChatGPT. Tell it to take on that persona. Tell it to focus on its area and just to really grill you in an interview, and then to give you feedback at the end. Say, hey, after we do this for 20 minutes, or I'm going to tell you to stop. And then once I tell you to stop, that's when I actually want you to give me feedback. What could I have done better? How could I have said these things better, and so forth? I want you to do a deep, deep critique of what I could do better for next time, and then rinse and repeat. Do it again. Look, again, so for interviews, for difficult conversations, for anything like this, you can use this at home for, trying to tell your kids about the birds and the bees or something like that. Any of those kind of things, you can use these AI tools for, and use it to practice. Use it to make you more comfortable when the real situation is going to arise for that. All right. Ultimately, I alluded to this a little bit before, but look, communication is all about influence. When you are talking to other people, you are trying to influence them to hire you, to influence them to give you a raise, influence them to do their work, influence them to let you off on this Friday so you can watch that LinkedIn Live thing instead of going to the team lunch. Whatever it is, that is why we communicate. And back when I was in PayPal, I had this amazing boss who gave everyone on the team these little sheets. And on these sheets, it was this list of emotions. And he gave us each of these sheets as a reminder that whenever you're giving a speech, you should look at this and decide what is the emotion that you want your audience to feel at the end. Should they just be informed? Are they curious for more? Are they engaged and inspired? How is it that you want them to act? Sometimes you want to inform people, sometimes you want to persuade people. These are all different things that we want the audience to feel. And I'm ending with this because I want you to kind of go full circle with this. Like when you are sending an email, when you are writing up a blog post, when you are actually going to talk to somebody about whatever, how is it that you want that other person to feel? And give that instruction to the AI. Hey, I want the audience of this email to have a bias for action or something like that. Is that coming across with how I communicate? Think about that. Look, I just made this up. You could screenshot this and use this. You could take another version or anything like that if you want. But like, think about what is the emotion that you want your audience who is receiving this communication to feel at the end of this. That is the point of these communications. And just sometimes just like, and sometimes the answer might be, I don't know. Well, okay, that's all right. Then dig deeper into it. Well, what is it that you're trying to convey? How is it that you're trying to be effective with this? The higher the stakes of the communication, the more important this ultimately is, but it's something we should all be thinking of at all times when we're communicating. And we can have an AI make sure that we are being more clear, more confident in our communications so that we can have our audience kind of get this feeling that we want them to feel as part of that. So to kind of wrap here, and then I'm going to open up for questions. So folks do have questions, drop them in. Andrea's going to come in, or Ian, someone will come in, they'll reference them. I'll be able to answer questions about communication, about anything you want to in the last 15. But here's, what we talked about. Step one, draw your line. What is it that you want AI to do, and what is it that you don't want AI to do? You could think of this bigger picture, you could think of this smaller picture in any individual thing. Um, but like, where in your stack, where is it that you're providing value? And look, if you're having AI do everything for you, I'm really going to question what value when AI gets to be a little bit better at doing this stuff and we have agents, then oh my gosh, what value are you providing? Is there going to be a role? Look, there is for everybody. We humans have a lot of value that we're bringing to the table here. I don't want us to underestimate the value. AI can be so dumb. It can do so many things so wrong so often. And that's not going to change anytime soon. But like you really need to decide, okay, what is it that I'm good at, my uniquely human skills that I'm going to double down on and triple down on, and where can AI support me with that? Then build your stack, whatever it is. Again, the tool doesn't really matter. Grammarly is a little bit different, but there are other tools like that. Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, any of these. Each tool is going to have a role. Find the one you're comfortable with, use that. And in any of these tools, again, Claude tends to do it best, but all of them have different options where you can find a way to actually have an editor write like you, communicate like you. And ultimately, remember, ultimately have AI make you a good, clear communicator. You want to have the essence and the tone of your message to match the emotion that you want to have. Um, step below that might be where we were at before. We're like, oh, I don't know, I never really thought about that. That's kind of bad communication. But again, in the hierarchy of things, even bad communication is better than bad AI communication. You never want to just be handing all this stuff off to an AI just because it knows where to put em dashes and commas and all this other kind of stuff. The communication needs to come from you. It needs to be uniquely you. And the last thing in the world you ever want is to be in the situation of one of those romance novelists where, oh my God, the prompt is literally in the middle of your book. That's an extreme example, obviously, but that just destroys all credibility when you get to that point. So have it help you be a better communicator. That is the goal of everything that we're talking about here today. So with that, I will have a sip of water and we're going to move on to a little bit of Q&A. So Andrea, I think you have the board. Hopefully people can drop it in, any questions they have, and I will answer questions on anything.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike, for that really helpful presentation. I love the idea of using AI as an editor. I think, especially for people like me who I have a million thoughts all at once, and sometimes organizing the thoughts, especially like in emails to try to synthesize and just make it make sense. um,
Absolutely.
I think it's a great tool for that.
And,
But we
and
did,
one, thank you
mhm,
for saying that. Actually, you gave me
yeah.
another idea. I didn't even mention the presentation. Like you can use voice mode for this. So like if you're driving in the car and you're like, oh God, I have like 12 things I need to do today. Okay, I need to do this. And oh, I thought of this, blah, blah, blah. You can actually talk into an AI, just through your Bluetooth speakers in the car or wherever it might be. And you can
Mhm.
then say, at the end of that, it's going to transcribe it and say like, okay, can you edit this down for me? Can you actually make this
Mm.
actionable? What are my to-dos versus what are the business ideas I have or whatever else. So thank you for mentioning, but that is another way to do that as well.
I love that. Always learning new ways to use AI, which is great. We did have a couple of questions come through the
Great.
chat, so I want to get to it. One question came from Tomas, and he said, my question is, as a future business admin graduate, he's part of our SDSU online community.
Cool.
He's looking to see what kind of jobs are out there that he might be able to look into getting after he graduates. His experience is mostly in the automotive industry for over 25 years. So it sounds like he's trying to sort of pivot career paths and focus more in the business realm, AI, and just wondering if you had any insights about that.
Yeah. Great question. I love that. Kudos to you for doing a mid-career pivot, and saying like, hey, I have experience doing X and I want to apply that in different ways. Here's what I would say. In these situations, like there's always a way to do that. Like the first thing I would always ask myself is like, okay, what is my passion? Like, because if you do have a unique passion for, maybe it is in the automotive sector and maybe it is, more related to a car company or something like that or whatever, and there's applicability to that. I think whenever you're working for a company that you're really excited about, that matters. No matter like what your role is doing business or whatever, comms or PR or something like that in there. So I would start to dive deeper into just kind of like soul searching into where, like, what are your target industries and so forth as part of it. And then I would actually even take that one step further. And then I would actually go into finding out like what are the areas. So is it comms? Is it whatever it might be? And I would start kind of like doing that on the side. I remember back in the day when I wanted to be, I advise a lot of people on this. I kind of did something similar in my past, a product manager. What's the number one qualification that product managers are looking for when hiring other product managers? It's have you been a product manager before? That makes it really hard to start if you haven't done that. Find ways to do it on your own. So if you're looking to do some marketing, like start up a little side business, do something for a charity, doing some marketing or something like that. Or if it's comms or whatever it might be, like find ways to do this to just kind of one, explore the area that you're pursuing. Do this in school to find more about whatever area that might be as well. And then it also just builds up a portfolio of like, hey, I actually did this stuff for free, working for other companies. Because here's honest truth is like often when you're making a pivot or a change, you almost have to start off doing things for free, before you can do them for pay. And I know it kind of sucks, but like that's sort of the reality for that. But there's various levels of doing that. And like one way again is like find a charity that you're supportive of, help them with that. And then you could take those skills and just that experience, and that becomes your portfolio that you could then do at the company that you want to and whenever you find your dream job. Ian, you had some comments too, please.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Certainly echoing what you just described. But first of all, I wanted to say go Aztecs. I love that we've got an SDSU online student here with us. And my 2 cents on this are I think your automotive experience plus interest in AI, powerful combination. there's a lot of roles that, whether they exist today or they're coming soon, where this industry knowledge married with emerging tech could be really, really valuable. I think anything related to product, as Mike mentioned, certainly customer success is something that you would have a lot of experience with, given your 25 years in industry. Maybe technical account managing, AI adoption consulting for the automotive tech, lots of different potential avenues to explore there. But one thing I wanted to be sure to mention is because you're an SDSU online student with us, you also have access to our Career Services Center. So if we haven't got you connected with that team quite yet, let's definitely do that. So please reach out, or someone on my team will reach out so that you can avail yourself of all the services that are available.
Amazing. Thank you for pointing that out. Definitely make sure you take advantage of those resources, Thomas. Mike, a question for you. Are there situations where you would strongly recommend not using AI for communication?
I'm sure. I'm sure there are as part of it. Look, I think ultimately it's important to be transparent when you
Mhm.
use it. So throughout this presentation, for example, like I always footnote all of my pictures with, you will probably, actually, I don't even know if I have it on this one. Hold on a second. There's some of these, most of them. At some point, I'm like, well, you get the gist. If I go back, oh, come on, where is it? Well, anyway, you will see. Oh, there was one. There was one. So you'll actually see on the bottom there. No, now I'm going too fast. There, generated by Michael Tedasco, December 2nd, 2025 on Gemini 3. This is something that I actually try and use all the time just by being transparent. I never would want somebody to say, well, like, you didn't do that, you didn't design that. How did you do that? Blah, blah, blah. Um, I think it's better to be transparent with how you do this. I know of an authors are now starting to put in their bios, this is how I use AI. They have a statement of usage for AI and so forth. Like if an author, it makes sense. Now, every email that you send out, do you have to do that? Probably not. I mean, that's going to be just weird and bizarre to do that. But I would think just more often than not, whenever it's appropriate, go ahead and just be transparent with it. But yeah, the times where you don't use it, like, look, I would never have AI write out our holiday card or something like that, right? I mean, so we just did that as a family. Like, it's deeply personal. Like, I'd much rather have some typos in there than just having AI do that. I wouldn't want to touch it. And so, like, I think it's always a balance. Like, just kind of asking, well, how would the person on the other side react to this if they knew that this was, partially or wholly used by AI? Certain things like spell check, I think as a society, we're all kind of moved past that of like, oh boy, somebody use spell check on this, that ain't cool. So I think that's something else. But like to have, whole passages and things like that written by AI, we're getting into a little bit more gray area to most people probably wouldn't be as comfortable. So just kind of keep your audience in mind and how would they react if they knew it, and then communicate responsibly from there.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. And I think we have just one more question. And do you think, or how much context do you think is too much context when prompting AI? Obviously, we know that the more details that you can give it, the better the outputs, but is there a point in which it becomes too much context for the AI?
There used to be, I would say, really now there isn't that anymore. The context windows literally is like how many tokens, how many words an AI can digest and get that into their memory and so forth. Um, it's really hard to overwhelm an AI with something like that.
Hmm.
You probably do get a point of diminishing returns. So uh, if you wrote a 1,000-page novel and you wanted to kind of mimic that style of the novel, could it probably get the gist of it by reading, 10 pages of that novel or something and uploading that? Yeah, that probably would be good enough to capture your style. So like there's probably diminishing returns more than anything. For the most part, when I'm prompting, I want to. I kind of prompt until I'm like, okay, would an intern understand what I'm trying to communicate here?
Hmm.
That's typically the rule of thumb that I'm using with how clear do I have to be with this set of instructions. So, I'm like prompting, depending on what it is, it might be a few sentences, it could be a couple paragraphs. It's rarely any longer than that. But it used to
Hmm.
be a much bigger issue than it is now. Context windows, because the AI models have gotten better, have just become less of a problem.
Mm, that's a good point. And also, Anna in the chat brought up a good point. She said it's important for students to be cognizant of institutional policies regarding the use of AI, as well as individual instructors' course policy. Students need to develop skills to be able to evaluate AI generated material. So I think
Absolutely.
that was a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I will say, and being part of a university, you'd think I would have started with that, which I probably should have. But one thing I will say is like, and look, I think you have to respect a professor. And look, I think it's important for professors to be transparent with their students and how they are using AI as well
Mhm.
as part of that policy. I think it goes both ways. If you're expecting the students to be honest, you got to be honest right back with them and be transparent. We're all figuring this out together. My son, when he was in eighth grade, quick story. He took an English class, and in that class, do you know what the teacher said? He was like, "Do you know what? No computers anymore. We're just writing everything longhand. We're going old school, doing this." And I remember I had lunch with him at some point, and basically my first words on my mouth were like, "Thank you." Like, that's awesome. Like, just set the stage. Like, okay, for this eighth grade writing, it's important to do that. So, like, do you know what? I'm not even going to worry about that. That's how I'm going to set the boundaries for every company, for every class, for everything. We need to have clear boundaries. We need to have clear communication going in both directions of what the expectations are and why. And he explained to the class why, and he explained to the parents why. And you know what? It was the right call for that teacher in that class.
Mhm. I love that. Well, that's amazing. And we are just right up on time. So, Mike, if you want to flip to the last slide, for those of you who are still with us, thank you for hanging out with us to the end. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is our last expert series session of the year. So, we're so honored that you decided to spend your Friday with us. We are going to pick these back up again next year in 2026. Please follow us on social media at SDSU Global Campus to stay up to date on all of our upcoming events for 2026. And then, Mike, can you just please drop for everyone where they can reach out to you if they have any other questions about AI?
Look, you're already on LinkedIn, so probably that's the best place to hit me up. You just Mike Tedasco on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Send me a DM, post a message, whatever. I will respond to you on that. I'm always happy to help out.
Amazing. And Mike, I just want to take a second to thank you so much for all the time that you've dedicated over these last several months, jumping on these LinkedIn lives and just really spreading your knowledge about AI. I've certainly learned a lot, and I think that our audience has as well. So appreciate your
Thank you,
time, and
Andrea.
Ian as well. Thank you
Pleasure.
so much. Amazing. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your year holiday season, and we'll see you again in 2026. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.